Hey guys, welcome to CoinFund Q&A with Aragon. We have Luis and Jorge here. Do you guys want to say hello and introduce yourselves?
Sure, yeah. I'm Luis from Aragon and the project lead. I got started with free software when I was 12, founded a couple of companies.
Do you guys want to say hello and introduce yourselves?
I'm Jorge. I got started mostly in the iOS app community, and now I'm kind of focused on Ethereum development, and I do mostly tech for Aragon.
Cool. So can you guys tell us a little bit about what Aragon is?
Sure. So Aragon is basically a platform for building, decentralized organizations, for managing them. And so we have like a very easy user interface in which you can create your own DAO, assign tokens to people, vote on decisions, also fundraise. So, open token sales, either private or public ones. And also you can customize how your organization behaves. It has like a very extensible bylaw system, so you can make your organization basically behave like the kind of organization that you want to have. And also, we are building the Aragon network, which will be a decentralized jurisdiction, similar to, for example, how Delaware is in the traditional world, but for the decentralized world, to provide an easy way for decentralized companies to have services that are pretty much needed in the day-to-day basis. For example, a decentralized court system or easy contract upgradability.
Awesome. So I'm a little bit familiar with the project, and what's really interesting to me is that there's kind of like two sides here. On the one hand, you could look at the product that you guys have built over the last several months as sort of a very traditional dashboard for companies. It kind of looks like maybe something like eShares or something that's just like a management tool that allows you to keep track of what's going on in terms of ownership, in terms of what kind of proposals are going on in the company. And then there's this other really interesting aspect of Aragon, which is that, of course, it's backed by the Ethereum network, but it's also really kind of a serious project in decentralized governance. So can you talk a little bit about the front end and a little bit about the back end, because I think that's some of the more interesting part here.
Sure, yeah, so I'm gonna jump in and talk about the front end first, and then Jorge can talk about the new architecture that we are having for the back end. So in the front end side of things, we came to this world and we thought like, there is no easy way to actually manage or create DAOs or, even like doing governance, which is something that we do every day in the blockchain world. So what we have right now is kind of a pretty traditional, conventional UI to managing companies. So that was the first thing we did. Our first focus is like traditional companies. And now we're making it more broad. So you will be able to interact or create any kind of, for a nonprofit to a open source project that uses Aragon for governance to, a traditional company. And also we are seeing that a lot of projects in the blockchain space, we already have interest from a few, want to basically use their own token with their own functionality, but govern it with the Aragon, with the Aragon framework. And so basically how this will work is that you have any ERC20 compatible token, which is like any standard Ethereum token. And you will be able to, well, you can actually do that right now in our test version, in our alpha. And you can just grab that token app and use that token for governance. So let's say you are, for example, DGX or Status or, I don't know, any project that has, or we have a token. You will be able to offer governance to your token holders by using that token that you have in Aragon.
Mm-hmm. So is it literally that like, if I'm DGX or something, I can kind of import the ERC20 DGX contract, and then what do I see in Aragon? Do I see just like the entire map of all of the holders of DGX?
Yeah, like you could see that, and then you could like take voting decisions. So for example, let's say that the DGX is like a DAO, and this DAO controls some funds. So people will be able to actually control those funds or control some parameters about the DGX network itself, or if it's a protocol, the protocol. So yeah, I mean, you can basically open it up to do anything. So I mean, Jorge can probably talk about the backend and the huge refactor we are doing right now, because we're working on economic abstraction, we are working on better governance, we are working on pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Regarding your last question, like just to be very precise here, if DGX, for example, or whatever ERC20 token that wants to use Aragon right now, because the ERC20 token protocol is so like it's so simple, like it's not enough for doing governance, because if you use just the token and say if you have tokens you can vote, you will reach the problem of double voting really quickly, which is, okay, I have 10 tokens, I'm gonna vote. I voted the proposal, I transfer my tokens to another address that I can control, I vote again with 10 votes, and doing that so you can kind of own the system. So right now, what we do is for tokens that are just ERC20 compatible, the tokens need to be wrapped in a ERC20 plus the governance features that we need. That's what we're doing right now, but we're in the process of probably migrating the core governance token that Aragon uses to the Minimi token standard. And once that happens, which the Minimi token standard, it's basically ERC20, but it keeps track of what the balances were at any given block number. So what it allows you to do is, it doesn't matter if you transfer the token after a voting has started, because you will be looking at a like kind of a snapshot of the block of the token at a given block. So right now, for the DGX part, you will need to kind of wrap the DGX token, convert your DGX token to your DGX governance token, then vote, and then you could convert those tokens back to normal DGX tokens. But it's a bit cumbersome, but in the UI, in the product, we managed to do it pretty easily. And also, asking your question, I'm gonna share my screen really quick because I have a nice graphic that I did for a presentation the other day, which is basically how we're structuring how the new structure is gonna work. It's basically split in kind of search four levels, depending on how easy or how critical the parts are, and how they can be upgraded. Like from left to right, it's more immutable and more critical parts of code to more to where the interesting things happen, which is here at the application level. So this part on the left is pretty boring, which is basically allowing people to interact with the organizations using different methods of transactions. And then the interesting part is actually here, which is we have this organ structure in which you can swap every component of this. And then which we're working on right now is in every part of every core part of the organization. We are taking it apart from like kind of a monolith, unique contract for the organization, and putting it in different applications that a given organization can install or uninstall from the DAO, which basically allows for kind of, for example, the governance part is just an application built on top of the DAO at the application level. So if say you don't like kind of a democracy voting thing for your DAO, you can swap this module out and put here like a liquid democracy, or put here a footer key thing whenever it works, or maybe replace it for a okay, whoever is in a sunny place in my organization, who lives, for example, in Madrid, and in Madrid is sunny, can make decisions for the organization. Like whatever governance mechanism that you can think of, you can build it on top at this layer. And the interesting part is that applications of this layer are run in smart contracts, but they are in their own sandbox, so they can only do at the DAO level whatever it has been explicitly allowed for this. So it kind of reduces the threat that it can have in the whole system.
Okay, so this is a really cool diagram. I'm actually gonna like focus back on your diagram, Jorge. Really appreciate the detail here, but also I want to like dig in a little bit more and make sure that, you know, communicating to the viewers like what this kind of means. So this is showing that you guys have thought a lot about like how to modularize the system and really make it like very configurable, right? But let's be a little bit like more precise maybe. So let's start at level 0, which is immutable entity, and it says DAO. So what does this mean? Does this mean this is a smart contract?
Yeah, this is the for an organization, this will be the only smart contract that we can be sure that it won't need to be changed over time. So this will be kind of the address of this smart contract will be the address of the organization.
Okay, so this is a smart contract that like what are the basic features that are immutable in this DAO here?
This smart contract is literally 10 lines of code, and it has the logic for kind of starting the basic setup of the DAO, and also it only has a function which is and also it keeps a reference to the kernel. It knows what the address of the kernel at level 1 is, and the only thing it does is whenever it gets a transaction, it does a delegate call to the kernel. And the interesting part is this doesn't need to change, but because the kernel is just a reference and it's not the smart contract itself, you can swap the kernel reference, and you will be basically changing all the logic of the DAO, and even like whatever, without the immutable entity here changing at all.
Okay, so for the less technical viewers, can you just like quickly describe this concept from Solidity called delegate call? What does this do?
This is a type of call which what it does is if the DAO does a delegate call to another contract, it's basically saying, okay, I'm calling this contract, but I'm gonna do it in my own context. So what it does is it allows the contract it is calling to kind of modify the storage of the original contract, or send ether from the original contract or whatever. It allows basically the contract you're delegating calling to act as if it was the original contract is making the call from.
Gotcha. And so these dotted lines and arrows going from the DAO into this kernel section, those are delegate calls, correct?
This is actually this is not very good. A very good representation in the graph. It's actually the DAO has the current version of the kernel has 3 entry points in which how can you make transactions to it, which is you can do like we call vanilla ether transaction, which is your typical ether transaction with value and transaction data that calls a function. Then you have a pre-authorized ether transaction that is I might sign a transaction beforehand and then give the payload to another person or to another smart contract or whatever, and give him the already signed parameters, the elliptic curve signature, so they can make this call at another moment as if it was me who was signing the transaction, and acting the DAO in my behalf.
And then you do this thing called tokenizing ether, and I suspect I know why you're doing that. But can you explain like why you have to do this operation to ether, and like what does it mean?
Yeah, definitely. So for the version we're working on right now, for Aragon, the version 0.4, we are changing from the current version in which organizations only know of ether, the only value they can transfer with, and the only value organizations do their accountability with, it's only ether. And that's a bit of a problem, and a lot of organizations won't be able to kind of like, there's a lot of businesses that if they have to be exposed to ether volatility, they won't be able to exist, at least for the next couple of years until it kind of settles down. So it's very interesting that organizations can have their assets in other kinds of tokens. For example, DGIGs. This will be a perfect example. If an organization doesn't want to have ether volatility, they might want to have their assets in gold, or whenever Maker launches their DAI stablecoin, a company might want to have their assets in other kinds of tokens, which are as good at holding value and transacting value as Ether is. So basically what we're doing here, tokenizing the Ether, is in case a transaction has Ether, we will put the Ether inside a special ERC20 token that has Ether inside, which is basically like transacting with a new token that we're creating. But what the only thing that the token has is, if you have one token, is that there's one Ether inside the contract that you can withdraw at any point. But it allows us to only have one implementation, and that the DAO only has, like, it only knows how to interact with tokens, with general tokens that have an address and the typical ERC20 interface, and it will operate with Ether in the same way.
Gotcha. So you see like other similar examples of this, like you mentioned Maker. If you've seen Oasis decks, they also have to wrap Ether in order to kind of make it an asset that's tradable along with other tokens on their exchange. So this is sort of the similar idea, right? You put the Ether into a wrapper, and that wrapper gives it basically the properties of ERC20.
Exactly. It allows you to only implement this logic once, because you would need different implementations for Ether and for tokens. So you can just tokenize the Ether and only have this very sensitive logic of interacting with value. You can only implement it once.
Cool. So let's talk about level 2 here, the organs. So what are some examples of organs?
Yeah. Let me put here the actually from the Aragon core repo, because we have kind of the whole list of organs. Oh, one sec. Okay, so the organs right now, we have only 5 organs that we're working on, and maybe some logic will be moved to this level, but we don't think it's needed from now. So the first one is the dispatcher organ, which is whenever the transaction gets here, it gets to decide which is the organ of the organization that can take care of a transaction. So what it basically does, it asks another oracle first and foremost. It asks another oracle or itself whether that transaction can be performed by the person that is, by the entity that is performing the transaction, and how many Ether or how many DGIGs they're sending with the transaction. Basically, that allows to have the authorization system at this level. And if the transaction isn't allowed, it will stay here and won't be forwarded to the main logic of the app.
And what happens in that failure case? Like, let's say you don't have permission to perform that transaction. Can you get thrown?
It reverses the state.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it fails.
Wait, so can you go back to your list of organs just real fast?
Yeah. Then we have this one that we call the meta organ, which is the organ that allows for changing the values for everything that is below this level, which is basically what keeps how do you replace an organ, or how do you set an organ at X level, and also what is the, for example, how do you replace the kernel reference here, the DAO kernel reference, and also, like, this is like pretty sensitive stuff. And the other thing that the meta organ does is it keeps the reference to what is the Ether token, which is actually very important too. So this meta organ, the thing it does, it keeps, like, it allows to modify low-level DAO parameters.
Awesome.
Yeah. Then the next one is the token vault organ, which we're working on right now, which is basically how do we. It's basically the one that keeps track of what are the assets that the DAO owns, and the logic for kind of transacting with tokens and receiving tokens and all that stuff. We're still working on this. Then we have, on top of that, the government tokens organs, that it's basically what are the governance tokens that have power over the organization. This is we put this at this level because this is something that many applications will use, which is, for example, if you have this at this level because the capital application will use this to know what are the shareholders of the organization, and for example, a voting app will use it to know what is the voting power of this person. So we kept this here, which is basically a list of the ERC20 tokens that have power over the organization. And then on top of that is the last organ is the applications organ, which just takes care of what are the applications that have been installed in the DAO, and then what it does, it does a call to them, because we think it's very interesting that each application here, it's its own smart contract, so it lives inside their own sandbox. So for example, if I install whatever module to my dApp, to my DAO, at least I know I have to grant it explicit permissions of what can it do, and everything else it won't be able to screw the storage, or to have a very bad bug that because of how it interacts with the rest of the system. I mean, it will only be able to screw up to what it has explicitly been allowed to do.
Mm-hmm. So, here's a question. So, you kind of mentioned that which applications are installed in the DAO. So, my question is, when you install an application in that immutable entity, is that like a one-time operation? So, like, if you want to shift around and change applications, you're going to have to go and deploy a new DAO contract, or is that something that can happen dynamically? Like, can you slot applications in and out?
Yeah, the interesting part of this, and one of the things we wanted to achieve with this architecture is to allow exactly what you said. You only have to deploy your DAO once, and then you can install or remove parts of the DAO without needing to change in this immutable entity that will be able to kind of do everything, like allow all changes that this allows. And because this is so simple, it basically allows for everything to change. But of course, for changing an application or for installing an application in DAO, it's the DAO governance and the bylaws that need to allow, like they set the rules for what needs to happen to install an application. So let's say, and this will be a pretty sensitive operation, so you will very likely need to have like tons of support, like be a voting with a high enough quorum and with a high enough debate period, or you could, like, once you have your DAO set up, you could disable this forever if you want to. So
that's
yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, the idea is that it kind of allows you to do whatever you want, but for sure the idea is you can deploy your organization today, but your organization and your needs might change, and then the architecture must allow you to do that without the mutable entity and the mutable existence of the organization changing.
This is great. So you guys, like one thing to note here is that this discussion has been probably like a lot more technical than we normally engage in CoinFund Q&A. But this is actually awesome, because I think it's a good way of demonstrating like how much detailed work you guys put into designing these smart contracts, and that's really the most important part of this project, right? It's just this is kind of an advanced smart contract system. And so let me ask you, so when you design a system in this like really modular way, sometimes like designing modular systems could be like more time consuming and expensive and than just kind of designing singular systems. And the fact that you guys design this system in such a way implies to me that you're anticipating a lot of iteration that's going to come in the future, and a lot of like evolution, a lot of new features being added. So can you talk a little bit about like that? Like, is this thing going to evolve?
Yeah.
Definitely, and I think it's very interesting what you're saying, because doing this way, it obviously has some trade-offs. For example, for every application call, which is where most of the logic when you interact with your organization needs to call, like 4 calls need to happen, and this is going to be expensive. But like doing the trade-off with ourselves, and we, when we were designing this and in the whiteboard, I think it's definitely worth it. Even if imagine the EVM is massively changed, and we get EWASM and all that great stuff. We want our system to allow for running this. Maybe not changing the core DA, but not changing the core DAO thing that was at the most left side, which can stay at the same state for almost forever, or until the EVM decides to stop supporting delegate calls. But yeah, and also what you said about what if we expect a lot of change to be made. I mean, definitely. And also, I think the interesting thing that this system allows is that it allows for iteration not to come all from our side, but from the community and from people that are envisioning other use cases for our software that we just won't have time for us to do it, or we won't have the expertise to do it in a very specific way that some organization might need it. So that's the interesting part, that everyone can expand the system, and I think this is one of the most interesting challenges ahead of us. And I think it would be really, really interesting if we manage to create the incentives for people to work on creating modules. If they are obviously economically incentivized, because either organizations pay for them, or the Aragon network can incentivize developers to build these kind of modules. Because if we can manage to create this kind of operating system or platform or app store for modules and for corporate governance, I think it could be very, very, very modular, and I cannot even start to think about the things that could be built.
That's really interesting, right? And that's one of the things in the blockchain space that always comes up as a theme, right? Is that if you can incentivize third parties to build around a decentralized network, and usually you do that through some kind of like economic incentive, like giving them tokens, or or just paying them ether or whatever, through grants or whatever it is, then you actually harness the power of the whole ecosystem kind of coming together and building around like the base that you've established here. So just to jump back for like 1 second, that diagram that starts with the DAO and then ends with the applications, this diagram represents one Aragon organization. Is that correct?
Yeah. It, like this one represents what the and all the boxes that were on the right on the applications, what the architecture for your basic capitalist kind of company / startup would be, all the modules it would need. Which is what you can see today in the beta, and we're kind of doing the transition from the non-modular monolith kind of design to this kind of all modular design. So those are all the pieces that we need to have all the existing logic that we have, and to port it to the new architecture.
That's super cool. And so let's talk about like the network that brings about like all of these different organizations, right? So when I open up your beta, your desktop application, like what am I looking at? Like when I hit create company, where does that go? Where does that call go?
In the beta right now, it goes to a very basic kind of smart contract factory, and you need to do 2 calls, because for gas limits we cannot do it in just one. So the first one kind of deploys your company and all the need contracts, and in the second one we do all the basic settings and setup for the organization. When the Aragon network is deployed, like this process will very likely change greatly.
Mm-hmm. So in the beta, it's just a couple of smart contracts that your company administers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where that code is going. How does that change when you actually deploy the network?
Yeah, so like how we are planning to create the network is basically as an opt-in. So if you want to create an Aragon organization that is not subscribed to the network, you will be able to, and it will work just as it works right now. And so how we want to do it is also like very modular in the sense that if you want to subscribe to the network, that's fine, and you will have to make a transaction to the network and pay a fee to the network in order to be a part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
get back the services that the network offers. But if you don't want to, that will be totally fine. And we want to do, we don't really want to like, our business model is not getting, money out of people creating organizations. So you are still like gonna pay, the gas you need to create an organization, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so obviously one of the reasons that we're here is because you guys are heading for an event where you're going to be creating the Aragon network and creating a token supply of Aragon tokens. So can you talk a little bit about the tokens and what do they do?
Sure. So when we got started with Aragon and we figured out, decentralized organizations are gonna be huge, and we are gonna start operating with them pretty soon. We are already seeing some of them. We came to the conclusion that there were a couple major issues for decentralized organizations to be widespread. So one of them was contract upgradability that I think Jorge talked about it a lot. How we can make sure that all the contracts stay to up to date. How can we make sure that all the bugs are fixed? How can we make sure that we create incentives for attackers to like have bug bounties instead of like breaking a lot of DAOs? And secondly, the other thing we saw is that with smart contracts, you can encode a lot of different logic, but you cannot encode all of human subtleties. So you cannot really like encode everything that you can do with English language, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
So we figured out, let's create kind of a decentralized card system for Aragon organizations to use. And so, basically these two things require network effect. You can do that with, a couple of friends of yours, and that's it. You can like create a card with a couple of friends, and that's it. Because then if you want to interact with other people on other organizations, they will have to be in your card. So, it starts growing. And so we figured out, let's create like huge supreme DAO that can serve as a jurisdiction, that can serve as maybe like a huge DAO for organizations to be in the same jurisdiction and to be in the same court system. And so that's the Aragon network, and that's what we are building. It will also have other services, of course, because all the token holders, and now we go back to the token, all the token holders, the Aragon network token holders, will be able to basically vote on how the network works. So this goes from the fees of organizations that are into the network, to the services that they are gonna receive, to self-upgrading the whole Aragon network. So you can think of the Aragon network token as a governance token. I think that's like it's a strength. So what we are going to do is we want to get it in the hands of as many people as possible, and then next year, we are targeting May next year, we want to actually deploy the Aragon network and start working with the decentralized court, with the availability mechanism, making governance decisions. I think it's also going to be like a very interesting governance experiment. We want to try things such as Futarchy in the future, and having the token is what basically lets us do that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
So in terms of the sorry, one second. I have like a bunch of echo in my phone. So tell us how the distribution of the token is going to work.
Sure. So we are selling 70%, and then we are basically keeping 15% for the foundation, which is an Estonian nonprofit, which will take care of the funds basically allocating the funds towards development until the Aragon network is up, when we will basically transfer a lot of the funds over to the Aragon network gradually for the network to administer them. And then the other 15% is for founders and early people who have helped and advisors as well. And here we did something that I think is very interesting, that is vesting. So we founders have vesting, also advisors have vesting, and even like people who have been helping and got into the pre-sale very early got vesting. So they're basically locked up. I think this really helps aligning the incentives for people and both founders and advisors to be in the project. So in our case, for founders, we have 2 years vesting. So this means our tokens go gradually increasing over 2 years. So basically, the day token sale launches, we have 0 tokens, and then 6 months in, we have like 25% of the tokens we have like allocated for us, and then that increases until we have like 2 years from now all the tokens that we have allocated. And so for advisors is 6 months vesting, so it works kind of the same, but in a tighter schedule. We really think that's something that every single project out there should be doing.
Cool. What else? What else do you see kind of in the future? Like, what kind of where are the funds going? Like, what kind of development do you see happening based on this raise?
Sure. Yeah. So we are lining up a few releases. We are trying to basically, from here to a year and a half, we have a development plan in which we will be working on, for example, economic abstraction, as Jorge was saying. So that's the next release we are doing, basically a release in which the company will, or the organization will be able to hold any kind of token, will be able to have like very tight accounting, will be able to give dividends to its token holders, also will be fully upgradable. And then we are gonna work on the module part. We're gonna work on making a module system for people to build upon it. We already have interest from organizations to basically not reinvent the wheel. Use Aragon and create a module both in the backend and the front end, like have a pretty UI on top of our already pretty UI. So we are going to work on that. Then we are going to work on the incentives for that module system, as Jorge mentioned. That's very important for us. Then we have another release that is the last release that we have planned for this year, which is just about upgradability. It's about making sure that a normal people that doesn't know about Ethereum can seamlessly upgrade his DAO in just a few clicks. And then we are working on integrating Aragon organizations with the network. So basically, our organizations will be able to do their own governance decisions with their Aragon network tokens. And then finally, we are working on the court. We will be working on integrating the court. And I think that's going to be very interesting because it's, it gets together a few pieces like prediction markets and bonding schemes. And so all of that gets together in a decentralized court that we expect to be more efficient than the courts that we see out there in the traditional world that take years to make decisions. And finally, there are other exciting things that we want to work on. Maybe a year and a half from now, maybe 2 years from now. Futarchy is one of them, testing this governance model. For people that are not aware of it, it's basically choosing a metric that you want to optimize and then making people bet in a prediction market for the outcomes of that, the proposals to increment that metric. So that metric may be like the wealth of the Aragon network. And then people are making sure that the proposals that are being implemented are used for incrementing that single metric. So, and if you nail it and you are, voting for a proposal that makes sense and achieves that, then you are rewarded. If not, you're punished. And also, we are pretty much looking forward to work with CK Snarks to make like basically fully anonymous organizations out there, which would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. So I want to jump into the decentralized court concept. So I think that's really interesting. And to me, like in many ways, a court is sort of a retroactive way of resolving disputes, like in the real world, right? And then when you get into the world of smart contracts, then smart contracts are kind of a proactive way of enforcing situations that like can't go wrong by definition. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you say decentralized court, there's like this fundamental, dissonance there. So like, can we jump into like what is the function of a decentralized court? What kind of disputes does it resolve?
Yeah, so I think we can like maybe just put an example here. So for example, like, if I hire an employee tomorrow, I can write a smart contract, or I can use Aragon and make sure that the employee will be paid and will be recurrently paid, some amount of Ether, even tokens per month. So I can make sure of that. But then what happens if the employee, for example, let's say I'm a newsletter. My business is making a newsletter. And I have this very valuable database of emails. That's my business. That's my information. And so this employee goes ahead and steals all of my emails. So what will happen in the traditional world is that you would sue that person because you have like an agreement with that person that should not happen. And right now in the decentralized world, what happens is that you have to trust that person. There is no way you can really like sue that person because it's all cryptographic transactions and no like legally recognizable documents. And so how that transaction will work is that you create a smart contract, but you also timestamp an English version of other pieces that you want to make sure, other like terms that you want to make sure that are not that you are abide for. And so you may say that there is some NDA there or some like clause or whatever. And then if there is a dispute, if the employee actually steals everything or does something that it was not expected to do, then you can go to the court and you can say, hey, this is a smart contract. This is the timestamp version of the English terms that we also agreed upon. And then the court, the judges can actually choose who's right and who's wrong, and who to punish and who to reward. So I think that's a pretty much like real world use case. And there are many more because like humans are very weird and we do a lot of different stuff that kind of like computers cannot understand. So, but yeah, that's one of many.
And who are the members of the court? Is this just like organizations in the Aragon network, or like are they elected individuals, or?
That could be, there's multiple levels. So if we look at it, it's just like a prediction market. So basically when you open a case, there is some judges, and those judges review the documents, and they review like basically, for example, the constitution of the Aragon network, like the basic laws, and then they review the actual content of that contract, of that specific contract. And then they can make a bet. They can make a bet on, err on the side of one part or on the other part. And after they all make the bet, they have to reveal it. And so, let's say, for example, it's 5 judges in the first round of the case, and 3 say yes and 2 say no. Then the ones that are saying yes are rewarded, and the ones that are saying no are punished. But then what happens if you didn't have very good luck and these guys were corrupted or were just playing wrong? You can then basically go to the second level, which is exactly that, but not only with 5 judges, but with the whole like prediction market of judges out there. So any judge in the network can participate. That's what I'm saying. And so there's pretty much like Augur, for example, how it works. You can go there and just make a bet. And then if you are not convinced with that result, you can then appeal to the Supreme Court, which is the 9 top judges by reputation. And so this reputation, we still have to think about which kind of token can be, but it can be some token derived from the ANT token, for example. And so, basically, there is no way they are not incentivized to do the right thing, because if not, they are heavily punished. So yeah, I think it's kind of the bonding plus prediction marketplace thing that is making this possible for the first time.
Cool. Let's jump away from like kind of the lower levels of the application and kind of go up in abstraction a little bit to the business layer. And like, how do you see this kind of application being used? Like, in other words, what are some real world use cases that you envision? It's one thing to say, you know, I think people in the blockchain space are going to find this like really compelling because they love smart contracts and decentralized organizations. It's another thing to say that, you know, I think Aragon will become the backbone of, you know, some real world website, you know, or company or something like that. So what do you see as the kind of short-term, mid-term, and long-term success scenarios for Aragon?
Yeah, I mean that's an awesome question, Jake, and I'm gonna start off with like some random examples of people that want to use it. So, for example, there's a guy who is gonna buy an island, and he wants to use Aragon for like governance of the island. Yeah, crazy. Then there was a girl who basically runs like a group of DJs. She's like a manager of like, you know, these jockeys, and basically she wants to use it for like paying them and basically running her whole business of like DJs and nightlife. And then going like into the more serious answer of the question. So like in the short term, we are seeing blockchain projects that want to really use us, like, you know, for example, the guys at the Status or 0x, Democracy Earth, DGX. And so I think that's going to be the early adopters. I think that guys want to use Aragon for governance. So they want to grab the token, as Jorge explained earlier, and use Aragon for governance so the token holders can take decisions. And secondly, after the blockchain projects, I think we are going to see open source projects, because right now they don't really have any way to organize themselves. So I think that's pretty much important, to create a token, and for example, that token can give partners or donors to the project some kind of voting, mechanism and governance mechanism as a reward. So that will be very interesting. And we also have interest from, namely, we have a Linux distribution that wants to use it. And then after that, I think we are going to see what you briefly mentioned, which is like purely internet, website-based companies around the world that are, remote, that are distributed, and that right now it's just too much hassle to have a distributed company and like have a subsidiary in each country. You have an employee, for example, that can do that. And after that, I think, maybe mainstream. That's what we are like trying to do for a couple of years from now. Make it so easy that my mom can use it.
So do you think like, well, let me phrase it this way. What is the more important use case to you? Is it the, two people who live across the world and want to run a blog together and then share in like the ad revenue of the blog? Or is it like Apple Computer Incorporated or Apple Inc. now, running on something like this?
Yeah, I think I don't know what's going to be the most important in terms of numbers, but I think the most moving one is, for example, a 15-year-old kid in Argentina, for example, being able to transact and to create value as a Stanford kid could do nowadays. So I think that's the most important thing, just making sure that anyone in the world can create value and can create businesses, and can basically organize and transact without intermediaries.
And I guess like part of the question also in Aragon is because you mentioned that with ZK snarks, right? There's going to be anonymity, etc. How does Aragon handle identity?
Yeah. So right now we use Keybase for handling identity on top of like obviously the Ethereum, which Ethereum basically if you have an address you have an identity. But for making it user friendly, we are working with Keybase right now. So you can like link your Keybase profile to your Ethereum address, and then you can like search, for example, for my username or for his username and transfer search or whatever. And then we are pretty much looking into switching to decentralized solutions like Uport.
Awesome, cool. So in terms of token sale structure, I know I was just looking at the sale term, and it looks like it's uncapped, but with a hidden cap and a hard cap for security. Can you just talk a little bit about the decisions that led, or I should say, the reasoning that led to those decisions. This is something that we at CoinFund study quite a bit, and I think like the way that you structure your raise often matters very much to how much you're going to raise, and also the price action at the point where you become listed on exchanges and so forth. So can you talk a little bit about your thought process in getting there?
Sure. So first of all, we have like a requirement for the network and the governance to work, which is that the token is very evenly distributed. And so how we are seeing that the ecosystem is working right now in terms of token sales is that projects set like an artificial cap, and then there is technical people and also like early speculators that get it in the first 10 minutes, and then like the next day, for example, they do like 3x with the people that didn't manage to get in. And we don't have anything against speculators or anything. That's great. That's part of the community, and I think that's one of the reasons we are here today is because of them. But we are trying to, for token to work better, we're trying to like onboard as much people as possible. So in our case, we wanted to do it uncapped, like Ethereum did, and also for the sale to last like a few weeks, basically because then you can onboard a lot of different people. So we wanted to do it uncapped, but then we figured out, what happens if we end up like in the DAO scenario and we end up with a lot of funds that are like a huge percentage of the, or even a small percentage of the whole Ethereum out there, but there's still like a very existential risk, and we don't want to risk, Ethereum because of us being irresponsible. So we put the hidden cap, and we also have like a hard cap for like paranoia security reasons, just in case if the hidden cap algorithm fails, which is like very, very difficult. But we have that hidden cap, and also with the hidden cap, we really want to empower small buyers because if you don't really know how large the cake is, for example, whales do need that kind of information to get in. So small buyers, they don't really care that much. So we hope that way we will get the more like evenly distributed token that we want to have.
Awesome. Like real quick technical question. So if you have a hidden cap, does that mean it will not be known throughout the course of the sale? And also, how does that impact the transparency of the crowd sale source code? Does that mean is the crowd sale source code still published?
So I will reply to the like first part, and then let Jorge jump in. So like we will reveal the cap either like in some point during the sale, either just before it ends, like it reaches the cap if that happens, because then when we reveal it, it basically becomes a hard cap. So no more funds can be received, and or either way, like for example, if the first blocks we see that there is a lot of people joining and we are like at that pace, we are going to reach the cap pretty soon, we are going to immediately reveal it. So that way people calm down, relax, see it's high. And so, basically we are able to, for the sale to last more time. And then Jorge can explain the other part.
Yeah, and regarding the hidden cap, the contracts for the token sale have been published now for almost 2 weeks. We've been running a bug bounty program for 1 week now, in which no critical nor bugs have been found until now. But how the hidden cap works at the smart contract level is very similar to how the Ethereum name services bits work, which are basically when we deploy the sale, we will post a cryptographically sealed commitment of the cap, which will be the cap amount, and then a random number that will be used to hide the cap value. And then this commitment will be a hash, a cryptographic hash of these two values. And then only Luis and I will know what these values are. At any point during the sale, we can reveal both values. The smart contract will check that they both, with those values, you can create the cryptographic proof that was provided at the beginning of the sale, and then it will act with the hidden cap. So ideally, we will reveal a cap when the sale is close to hitting it. Okay, ideally we will never reveal the cap until the moment we want to finalize the sale after the final block of the sale, which will be 4 weeks after the sale starts, which is definitely what we want to achieve with this mechanism. But in case it's close to being hit, there's some automated bots that are tracking the sale and that have also a transaction that they can make to the smart contract and can reveal the cap in case we weren't following the sale at the moment.
Cool, that's awesome. Guys, thank you very much for coming on and chatting with me. I think this is an awesome project, especially on the technical level, and I also love that we were able to cover so many different layers of it, right? From the low level to the kind of decentralization issues around governance, and how it is owned and how it works and how dispute resolution works, but also the thinking about kind of like the long-term business use cases. Is there anything else you guys want to say to people who might be watching and being interested in participating?
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely try it out. Alpha.aragon.1. Try it out. Create an organization. If you want to play, we have a few organizations that we want to, we can play with. So yeah, check it out. And any question, feel free to jump in our Slack. It's aragon.chat. And yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
All right, fantastic. Thank you as well. I'm going to stop the broadcast. You guys don't have to jump off right away. But again, thanks for coming on, and thanks for everybody who tuned in to watch.
Thanks a lot.